Breaking right now, Philadelphia authorities have an update after a police officer was shot and killed last night in a parking garage at Philadelphia International Airport.
Here's the mayor. Let's listen.
I'd like to begin by acknowledging the deep sorrow so many across our city feel today. It is difficult to express in words the pain and sadness caused by a loss like this. It is incredibly disheartening when violence impacts members of our own city workforce and those who dedicate their lives to serving their fellow Philadelphians. I extend my deepest sympathies to those who knew and loved the officer we lost last evening. We grieve with you. Philadelphia lost a dedicated city first responder who was simply doing his job and serving our city. And to the family, friends, and colleagues of the second officer who was injured in the same incident, we pray for his swift recovery. Everyone, keep these families and all members of the Philadelphia Police Department in your prayers at this difficult time. To honor the memory of our slain officer, all city flags will be flown at half-staff for the next 30 days. What happened last night was a terrible tragedy and a sobering reminder of the danger our police officers face every day on the job. And I want to commend the tremendous response of our police department as they search tirelessly for the criminals that committed this act of violence. If you have any information about this incident or any other, please report it to the Philadelphia Police by calling or texting 215-686-TIPS. That's 215-686-TIPS. We will not stop until they are in custody and brought to justice. Our fallen officer selflessly gave his life serving and protecting his community from harm. His sacrifice will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Stanford, Interim Police Commissioner. So before we get into the details and before I call up the Interim First Deputy, Frank Venora, to go into some specifics about what we have discovered thus far, just want to go over a few things. So just one point I want to make is that this has been, last night obviously was a rough night for our department, but the past week or so has been a rough week for this organization and for the women and men that belong to this organization. Going back to just over a week ago, where we had 3 officers that were shot in the line of duty responding to an incident. Fast forward on Monday, we had a commander die by suicide. Wednesday, the active commander. On Wednesday, we had an active police officer that we discovered died as a result, suddenly, possibly as a result of some type of medical emergency. And then last night, and last night, going back to the tragic incident, everything unfolded around 11 p.m., where we had 2 officers assigned to the airport unit responding to, in terms of arriving at work, parking in the parking garage there. Officer number 1 was Officer Richard Mendez, 50 years of age, 22-year veteran, almost 23 years, 3 days away from 23 years on the job, assigned to the airport, married with 1 daughter. He was arriving to work along with Officer Raul Ortiz, 60 years of age, married with 3 children, 20-year veteran of the department, also assigned to the airport. So both of them are arriving to work, as many of our officers do each day. And as they're stepping out of their vehicles, they hear glass shattering. And so doing what I would say all of our men and women do, again, tending to what was going on, paying attention to what was going on, they go to investigate the sounds of that glass shattering. And when they come upon either 3 or 4 individuals that are breaking into a vehicle, at some point in time, there is some type of encounter or struggle from what we know, which leads to, during that confrontation, that leads to Officer Mendez being shot multiple times and Officer Ortiz being shot 1 time in his arm. We also know that during that incident that a suspect was shot during that encounter. Officers responded to that location. Obviously, the suspect fled from that location in a vehicle in which, again, DC Venora will get into a little bit more in terms of details around that. Our officers responded. Originally, all of the officers were initially taken to Methodist Hospital, and then Officer Mendez was transported to Penn Presbyterian, and Officer Ortiz was transported to Jefferson. around 11:34 p.m., Officer Mendez was pronounced. And so, again, a very heartbreaking incident, devastating incident for the women and men of this organization. But I would submit to you, it's devastating to this city to know that this is the type of behavior that's occurring, the type of individuals that are out there on the street to take someone's life over a vehicle that didn't belong to them. And so just a reminder of the work that needs to be done, the individuals that are out there that need to be held accountable for their actions and what they're engaged in. Right now, there is a reward that's up to $148,500 for information that anyone may have that could lead to the arrest and conviction of these individuals. Some of that may be just for the arrest. Public Affairs will break those numbers out for you. But again, we're calling on the public to provide tips and information, 215-686-TIPS. You can remain anonymous. You can submit that information, and again, you can also submit it and claim this reward money. And so we will call on the public today, as we do every day, to help us and to assist us. We ask that you wrap your arms around this family, the family of Officer Mendez, but also around Officer Ortiz and his family. And I would ask that you wrap your arms around the Philadelphia Police Department, because we need it. We need that support. Our women and men go out and they fight the fight every day for so many people in this city. And so we ask for that support in return, and we need it. And so I'll leave you with that. I'll turn it over to Interim First Deputy Frank Venor to go a little bit more into the details of the investigation thus far.
All right, good afternoon. I'm not going to go into the preliminary. Most of you have the preliminary information. I am going to corroborate through investigation some facts that we found out. I just want to caution everybody that we are still very much in the investigative stage. All right, some of this information may change. We are working very hard on the investigation. The other thing I want to say is I can't give every detail out because we have active investigations going on into several areas of this incident. So, as the commissioner said, when Officer Mendez and Officer Ortiz arrived to the garage, they heard glass breaking. They encountered individuals they believed were committing a crime, breaking into a car. That encounter turned into a confrontation, which resulted in, we now know, Officer Mendez being shot, Officer Ortiz being shot in the arm, and they were transported to the hospital. A very short time later, we developed some information that a Dodge Durango is the means from which the individuals left the airport and fled. That information was broadcast, and people were looking for it. Just about the same time that the officers arrived at Presby, the Dodge Durango, we believe same one, arrives at Children's Hospital in West Philadelphia, and we are going to release through Public Affairs some clips of a video of an individual who drops off a shooting victim that was eventually pronounced at 11:37 p.m. at Children's Hospital. That individual is an 18-year-old male that I'm going to identify as Jesus Herman Madera Duran. That individual was dropped off. We believe that Durango is the same Durango that was seen leaving the parking garage. So we are now believing that this is connected. So that individual, we believe, was shot in the same incident as the two police officers. There are other individuals in that car that we are trying to identify. There is some video you're going to see of at least one of them exit the car, and he leaves the individual there and drives off. You're not going to see all of that, but you will have images of that individual. So we're urging people, if you know who that individual is, to please let us know. All right? That vehicle, that Dodge Durango, through investigation, we were able to discern that that was a stolen vehicle. It had been stolen about a week ago in South Philadelphia. Detectives were able to contact the owner of that vehicle. They was able to identify his vehicle. Also, we found out that that vehicle had a tracking device or an air tag inside it. Okay, at some point during the search for this vehicle, they were able to tap into that tracker and police officers on I-95 in the area of Academy were able to recover that tracker. So some of you today seen a search going on I-95. We were looking for additional evidence. And that's all I could say at this point. We're looking to see if there's anything else left behind by that vehicle. Sometime around 1:30 in the morning, police in South Brunswick responded to a vehicle fire. All right, we now know that our vehicle was set on fire in South Brunswick. We have members of the ATF, FBI, and our crime scene unit that are going to retrieve that vehicle, bring it back to Philadelphia, and process it for evidence. All right? We are also looking at a lot of other evidence, both ballistic evidence that was left at our scene. We're looking at digital evidence, video in a lot of different places, and we're looking at forensic evidence and everything we can touch. There's people working to try to identify the individuals. There could be up to 3 additional individuals that were inside that Durango. So anybody who may know who was driving that car or who may have been accompanying Mr. Duran during the course of these actions, we're urging them to give us a call. All right? And with that, if anybody has any questions, we'll be glad to try.
Duran is the shooter? Do you think Duran is the shooter in this case?
I couldn't say that at this point. I don't have any evidence to say who was shooting.
Do you know who shot Duran? Was that?
I don't. I don't. We don't know. One of the things I do want to mention is Officer Mendez's gun is missing. All right? That gun is missing. We do have fired cartridge casings at the scene. There's a lot of analysis going on, but we do not have that gun. We cannot discern who fired that gun, if that gun was fired or another gun was fired yet.
Has Officer Ortiz been able to share anything about?
I'm not going to comment on his. He's still in the hospitalized, and I'm not going to comment on his interview.
The timeline when they were arriving to work, is there?
Approximately 11 o'clock, a little before 11, they hear glass break, and they go to investigate the incident.
Were they technically not on shift yet, though, right?
Well, they were reporting to work. They heard a crime, and they 2 veteran police officers with decades of experience moved towards the crime, so they were working.
Were they in uniform?
One of them was with a jacket on top, Officer Mendez. Another one was in partial uniform pants with a sweatshirt on.
Would they have drawn their weapons as they approached? Think about how they approached.
I don't.
Would they have had vests on as they approached?
I could say that when we encountered them, they did not have vests, so I don't think they're wearing a vest when they're arriving to work. No. I can't answer that. We're analyzing video. We're going to release what we can to you. There may be more coming, but I can't tell you where we're getting the video from in every instance.
Can you talk about the lack of cameras in the parking garage?
I can't. You would have to ask somebody from the parking garage. I couldn't help you with that.
How about some information on Officer Mendez? I know he's with the force 22 years. I understand he might be originally from Northeast Philadelphia. Anything about the officer you might be able to share with us?
He worked a large portion of his career in the 25th District. I worked with him. I worked with both of them in the 25th District, and then transferred to the airport, I think sometime in 2018. Great officer, great person. Was admired by everybody that worked with him. So,
Commissioner, I have a question for you. You just spoke about last week you had the 3 officers shot. It seems like this year there's been more officers shot than in previous years, at least recently. What do you make of it? Like, why is there a brazenness from people in Philadelphia shooting up?
I don't think that just started this year. I think the brazenness goes back for some years. I mean, we had 2 years in which we had some of the highest numbers of homicides, and so I think the brazen behavior coming out of COVID and then civil unrest and folks not being held accountable in this city in terms of how they commit crimes and the response to that, I think has emboldened individuals.
By not held accountable?
Well, in terms of the real reality is sometimes there aren't consequences. I mean, if you are arrested and there's a second tier of the criminal justice system that isn't upheld, whether that be going through being prosecuted, whether that be going through the court system, sometimes there's always this conversation about zeroing in on just whether or not they're prosecuted. But I also remind you that there's a building on the other side of Broad Street, CJC. And again, there need to be folks in that building that are held accountable too, and that's always left out. Exactly right. And so I think it's looking at the overall criminal justice system not just the police, not just the district attorney's office, but looking at the overall criminal justice system. I think folks have heard it said before, there are ways that you can, hold people accountable. Everybody doesn't need to be in jail, but there are a good number of folks that commit violent crimes that we see over and over and over again, gun arrests, robberies, carjackings. That's not a thing that you should get a slap on the wrist. That you should be held accountable. And some of that requires time. Some of that requires you to be incarcerated. Some of that requires you to be monitored by the probation and parole system. That is all the components of the criminal justice system. And so when you say what encourages folks to commit crime, I think it's not just the violent crime, it's all levels of crime. You heard us talk about quality of life over the past few weeks, going back to the looting. There are folks that were engaged in that behavior, and all of you are on social media, and you could see the responses. When we said we were locking people up, you saw it change. When we said we were holding people accountable, we were going to make those arrests, you saw the responses from people, some of them saying, oh, wow, they're locking people up. Yeah, and same thing with the ATVs. The individual that decided to smash a window of that young lady's car. He was held accountable, he was arrested, and he's charged. And so I think people want to feel safe in this city. People want to know that people are going to be held accountable. If you are a victim of a crime, you want to know that people cannot do that to you and get away with it. And I think we have to understand there could be a balance in policing. We can do things that hold police officers accountable, which we do every day. But there also has to be a process in which we hold individuals that commit crime accountable. And I think that's lacking right now. And it's not just in this city. I think we see that lacking across the country. But my focus is this city. And so we're going to keep continuing to press on. We're going to continue to work with our partners. The district attorney's office is here. And so, again, I'm not going to get into that space of pointing fingers and blaming. I'm going to get into the space of we have to find common ground. We have to find areas that we can work together. We are going to disagree on some things, and there are going to be some places where we have to stand firm. But at the end of the day, people in this city are tired. They're tired of all the back and forth, the finger pointing, the blaming. They want to see results. They want to see people held accountable. They want to see people, again, held responsible for the actions, and they want to feel safe. And that's going to require some people going to jail.
What do you tell the rank and file as they have to go out there day after day, night after night, given what just happened?
I mean, I support them 100%. And again, I tell them to make the arrest, to do the jobs where it's warranted, make the arrest, to do the job you've been sworn to do. And again, that's why I call on the support from all of you and support from, folks that are in these communities. There are many people that live in so many communities across this city. They want people held accountable. They want to feel safe in their neighborhoods. Hardworking people in so many of these communities across this city that want to know that they have a police department that is again, doing the job that they've been sworn to do. And so I encourage our officers to continue doing the work that they've been doing. They've been doing some amazing work. I mean, the fact that we're down almost 20% in homicides, the fact that we're down 25% in shooting victims, 21% down in shooting incidents, that's a key indicator that our folks are doing some amazing work each and every day. Carjacking's down 40%, and I can go on and on, but at the end of the day, that's the amazing work that they're doing. They need to be supported. They need to be encouraged to do that. And again, when we get that and we see that, that makes them feel better about doing the job and makes them understand that the job that they're doing every day.
This was told to me by my grandma. 38 people gathered on the porch.
The department said it's going to increase patrols at the airport due to the rash of car thefts that have been going on. Did that happen, and was there adequate staffing last night?
So, I mean, the reality is that we would like to increase, staffing and patrols everywhere. That's why we, have a robust effort around recruitment and trying to employ more officers. We have strategically looked at all of the units across this department, all of the areas across this department that require staffing, and have tried to make adjustments. And so the airport is no different. We have a mandate of having a certain staffing level that we must keep there, and we do that. And so is there a want or desire to have more officers in a lot of places throughout the city? Absolutely, but we have to be realistic as to what we have available to us and what the needs require at that time, and those have been met down there. In terms of, we'll continue to look at staffing, whether it's at the airport or whether it's at, the 21 districts that cover the city. But we'll continue to look at that.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you. That's all we have. Listen, that's all we have time for now. We're going to get that video out to you shortly. All right. And we'll get that out to you shortly. We ask that you continue to share.
News conference. You've been listening to a news conference held by Philadelphia police regarding.
Thank you very much, folks. Thank you. That's all we